It's it. Well, so we'll peel back the layers here. Are you originally from San Diego, or are you just a Padres fan?
So, well, actually, the baseball hats are kind of a funny story because I'm a bald guy. I wear a lot of hats
Yeah,
and I travel for work most weeks.
yeah,
So, I started this social experiment a few years ago where I thought, I wonder what I can do to get people to engage with me and have like some sort of a meaningful conversation.
yeah.
And I'm like, well, I wear lots of hats, so let's just try hats and see what that brings. So I tried all kinds of hats, right? I'm a big baseball fan, so I tried baseball, I tried hockey, I'm a big hockey fan, football, college, right? I tried all kinds of things. And with everything other than baseball, it was sort of hit or miss.
Yeah.
Like you wear a Packers hat, people will, you'll Packers people will talk to you, right? Um, but you wear a baseball hat, everybody will talk to you. It blew my mind,
That's
right?
what a great experiment, dude.
So I have had in the last, 3, 4, 5 years, more meaningful conversations with people that started because of whatever baseball hat I was wearing that day, um, than I would have ever had otherwise. It's been super fascinating. So I got into this sort of routine because I travel so much. When I land in whatever town I'm in, if I don't have that team's hat, I buy it.
There you go.
Right. And then I swap out for whatever I'm wearing. I take a quick read through the news and make sure I can at least speak, like I know what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, and I wait. And it's just been fascinating. TSA agents, rental car people, hotel clerks, bartenders, wait staff, like people will just engage me and start talking about baseball, which really surprised me because, baseball, it's not football in this country. Um, and I thought, everybody loves football, and that's what'll bring the conversations, and it just didn't. Baseball does consistently year over year. So I keep doing it and I keep having the conversations. And it's been going on so long now that um I have clients because of baseball hats. I have friends because of baseball hats, right? I've been invited to events because of baseball hats. It's kind of crazy.
I love it. I want to keep this in here. That's a great start, launch point here.
Yeah,
So, just officially, it's great to meet you. Thank you so
likewise.
much for taking a minute out.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with that being said, what is your favorite team?
So my favorite team is the Boston Red Sox,
Okay.
and it's a good story too because I grew up in DC, but I'm too young for the Senators, and I moved away before the Expos became the Nationals.
Yeah.
So I was kind of team agnostic. I kind of followed the Orioles when I was a kid. Um, but every time I moved around, I'm like, okay, well, I guess we live here now, so let's go to some baseball games. Um, and then so I was dating a woman. I went through a divorce a few years ago, and I was dating a woman. Her dad was in his mid 80s, and he had a degenerative lung disease. And he grew up in Maine, so lifelong Red Sox fan. And so we kind of bonded over baseball. And he told me as he was on his exit journey, he was like, "Hey, bud, I expect you to fully pick up and carry the mantle for my Sox when I'm not here."
Wow.
And I said, "Aye, Skip, let's do this."
That's
So,
awesome.
so
That's
he and
very
I,
cool.
for the last couple of years, he was around. We, spent a lot of time watching baseball and talking about baseball, and yeah. So I am carrying the mantle for the Red Sox because of Brian Rich.
I love it. What a great story. So, let's begin our journey into your work. You're a busy man
Yeah.
doing a lot. And I want to begin with 5 years ago. We were really getting knee deep into this pandemic, figuring things out. How much of living through that time period has affected your work and the way that you live your life today?
I mean, great question, right? I mean, we had been threatening to write this book for about 4 years.
Yeah.
And when the pandemic hit, we were like, well, priority number one, we got to get the book done, right?
Yeah.
Because now we have no excuse. Before it was, all well intentioned, but we travel all the time, and it's like, eh. So priority number one was we're going to get the book done. So we focused on that. What was really fascinating is a couple of things happened so quickly, we had to make decisions in a way that was super uncomfortable for me. I am not a cowboy, quick decision, let's just figure it out as we go kind of guy. And my business partner, Morag Barrett, she said this on like day 3. She said, this is going to last at least a year. And, we were like, I don't know. It's going to be like SARS. A couple of weeks, we'll be back on airplanes.
Yeah.
She said, we need to figure out how to do what we do digitally, because 95% of our business up until Friday the 13th of March 2020 was done standing in front of a room full of people.
Yeah.
Right? Get on a plane, take an Uber, go to a hotel, go to a beige conference room, get back in an Uber, go to the airport, go home. It was rinse and repeat, right? And we did some webinar, but not a lot. I mean, it was 3-4% of our business. We did it when we had to. And it all kind of sucked. Like, nobody was really good at it. So she said, we got to figure out how to be really good at this. And she said, look, Eric, you're a recording studio guy. Figure out how to make us look and sound good, and do some research. Like, what makes people engage with digital content? And I did a bunch of research. And the overarching thing that I learned is people will put up with shitty content. People will put up with shaky video. But if you sound bad, they're out.
Yeah.
So you have to have quality audio to back up your stuff. So we just went down this path where we decided we were going to do this as well as we did our stand-up stuff. So we spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, which was super scary in a time when you thought, okay, all of our revenue is dependent on standing up in front of a room full of people, and we're not doing that. So how are we going to make money?
Yeah.
So we made this pivot, and it was super risky and very scary, and we did it. We ended up having a fine year in 2020. It was
That's wonderful.
fine, right? Another thing that happened during that time frame was my wife and I started a podcast. She's a chief HR officer here at a tech company in town. I'm a recovering HR person. And one point in my HR career, one of my clients came into my office and he said, so tell me about your job. You just listen to people bitch about stuff all day long? And I'm like, well, some days it's like that. And he said, oh, you're like a bartender. You're like the corporate bartender. So we started a podcast, and one of my guests sent me this. It's called The Corporate Bartender. They sent me a bar mat. So we started doing that, and, we're 220 some episodes deep, and we've been doing it for 5 years, and have built a really cool sort of community of HR talent leadership and people leaders over the years. We've got a companion website. There's a few hundred people over there. It's a labor of love, and it's a lot of fun.
But isn't that great, the realm of podcasting, getting in there and meeting people and interacting and having this civil discourse and kind of refuting the idea of us being divided as a people in this country?
Yeah.
It kind of unites the mentality. The psychology is so good in this realm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're taking the time to actually connect with people as people.
Yeah.
And that's the angle that SkyeTeam takes to our leadership development. It is predicated on the idea that the number one influencer of happiness, engagement, and productivity at work, and happiness in life in general, is the quality and depth of the relationships that you have with the people in that ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's borne itself out to be true. It's given us enough of runway to write a couple of books about it. We've got content on it. If you engage us to do anything, just you want to do a workshop on feedback and emotional intelligence, it's going to come flavored with the idea that it's relationships that is the butter in the pan, the secret sauce.
Absolutely. So let's get into exactly what you do on a daily basis for a living.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of kids, 6th graders, career day. The kid in the back of the room is like, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer him?
I talk to people, Joe. That's what I do. I talk to people. No, what I used to have to, because it's funny. My kids never knew what I did. My parents still struggle with what I do. But what I tell people is we work with organizations, teams, and individuals to help them get better. Whatever that means.
Yeah.
Right? In a leadership development context, we build leadership programs for cohorts of people that we take on a journey over time. For intact teams, we work with those teams to get aligned, to get on the same page, to hold each other accountable, to figure out how to get the most out of each other and the relationships that make up that team. In individual coaching, it's one-on-one. It is therapy light.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what we do.
I love it. So what did you want to be in the sixth grade? What was your dream job?
Oh, I was going to be a drummer in a heavy metal band.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the first concert you ever went to growing up?
So there are two answers to this question, Joe. There's the real answer, and there's the answer I tell people when I want to look cool. So the very first concert I ever went to was in 1983. I went to see Rick Springfield and the Sparks at Merriweather Post Pavilion in Columbia, Maryland. And it was an amazing show.
Yeah.
But, Rick Springfield in the cool years of the 80s and 90s carried a little bit of a stigma. It wasn't super cool.
Yeah.
So the first concert I went to with no adults was Iron Maiden and Twisted Sister at the Capitol Center, 1984. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, those were some days, man. I remember seeing the first show I ever saw was Kiss Animalized without the makeup. And that was weird because it was just like it didn't have all the theatrics because I saw them later in life. But the first real big show that I saw, which I can't believe my parents let me go alone with my best friend, I saw Motley Crue's Theater of Pain.
Oh, yeah.
And that was insane. That people were shooting bottle rockets, women were throwing everything off. Nikki Sixx was tripping the sound guy.
The drum set did the 90-degree thing. Yeah.
Just the whole thing was gonzo. You
Yeah.
never would be able to do that today.
No.
Not even for a minute.
It was the 80s, man. That's what we did.
That's right. That's all you need to say. It was the 80s. So talk to me a little bit about some of these foundational elements from your childhood that were planted into you that made you a people person, made you somebody that motivated others to be at a better place in life.
Yeah. So I grew up the son of an entrepreneur, right? My dad had run his own business from the time that I was about 5 years old to he's still doing it today. So I learned a lot from him just about how to interact with people, how to provide people something that they can use, and how you get to be in charge of your life at that point, right? Like if you provide something valuable to people, they'll pay you for it. And then you don't have to go get a crappy job that you don't want to have, right? Now, I did have a bunch of crappy jobs that I didn't want to have, and I didn't get to this point until later in my life, but I've done it a few times along the way because of that spark, that little seed, that genesis. What I learned as I was growing up, I grew up a musician, and you know what it's like if you're in that zone, you got to kiss up to a lot of people to get anywhere, to do anything. So you figure out how to interact with folks such that they'll give you a chance. And then I always, no matter what I was doing, what band I was in, what the act was, what instrument I was playing, I knew that when we showed up, if it was a 10 band festival, I knew that we were going to crush it.
Yeah.
Like people were going to leave feeling really good. Right. And it's funny because I still play in a goofy, dad rock cover band now. And my wife will tell me, she was like, do you know how much joy you bring to a room? You get up there and you do your thing for 2 or 3 hours. And there were 2 or 3 hours where everybody is dancing. Their eyes are closed. Yep. They're not thinking about work. They're not thinking about problems at home. They're not thinking about going to the doctor. They're in that moment experiencing raw, unfettered joy. And I never really thought about it like that because for me, it's just the thing I always did, right? Like it's Friday, I have a gig, I'm going to go do my thing, and I'm going to come home and it's going to be late and my back's going to hurt and I'm going to be tired. But I never really thought about it from that audience perspective, from what they get out of it. Like we were just talking, like what we got out of being at that Motley Crue show in 1987.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's just like, oh, wow. For 5 minutes, I'm not worried about school or my girlfriend or whatever it was, problems that plagued my 15 or 16-year-old self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how much of being a musician and thinking musically in your life has lent to you being effective on a business side with human beings and motivating and helping them? How have those converged, the Venn diagram bled into each other?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the probably the biggest thing, well, two things really. Number one, it's learning how to improvise. Um, because when you start a project, and in our case, that's we're stepping on the stage to go lead a program,
Yeah,
right? Rarely do we do it by ourselves. We'll do keynotes alone, but we usually do what we call a double act. There's at least two of us on the stage.
yeah,
And we used to joke around. I mean, I used to say this every time before we would step out there. I would look to whoever I was co-facilitating with, and I would say, "I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say today." Because I have the basic bones here, but
mhm,
when you get out there and you start interacting with people, the script isn't the script anymore, right? you're
yeah,
you're in the moment, you're in that room, and I don't know what the other person's going to say, and I don't know what question's going to get asked, and I don't know which direction the conversation's going to go. We could be doing a team session and have a rigorous schedule with way too much content in it, and you get into the first discussion and you find out that the team wants to talk about something that we didn't even think about.
yeah,
And that's where the attention needs to be. And that's what they want to talk about. So that's what they talk about.
yeah,
So, when you're playing on stage with a bunch of live musicians and somebody makes a mistake, you just keep going, right? You
yeah,
don't acknowledge the mistake. You don't stop the band. You don't say, "Oh God, everybody, we screwed up," right? You give that player a knowing look, a little bit of eyeball empathy, because we've all done it. Um, and you plug along. You
yeah,
get the song done, right? So
absolutely.
it's the nature of improvisation, and that you keep doing the thing. I when I'm working with newer facilitators, I always tell them, I'm like, they don't know what's on the next slide.
Right.
So if we decide we're not going to do that and we're going to do something else, they're not going to be sad,
Yeah,
right? If we try to force that in when they want to talk about something else, they're not going to be happy.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? In my 20s, I was good friends with the people that were in a band that were on the cusp of making it. And I have a jazz radio show. I've had it for like 14 years now, and I've never played an instrument. I've kind of tangentially played the drums and noodled around here and there,
Sure.
but I've kind of stayed out of it because it's a visceral experience. And I think about when they would get off stage and they'd be like, that monitor wasn't this, that chord was wrong, this. I don't think like that. And that's the reason why I'm kind of keeping this music purity, because the audience doesn't hear those missteps.
No.
We just feel the flow of this good
Yeah.
feeling of escapism, like you said. So it's not something that's honest, but it's the hacks of musicians. They either hear all that or their music won't stop.
Yes. 100%. And again, right? Why do people go see live music? They don't go see live music to see you. I mean,
Right.
kind of. If you're Metallica, yes, they want to see you. But even then, that is peripheral to what the true core of the experience is.
Hmm.
I go to see, I said Metallica because they're coming, and, they're getting old. I don't know how many times I'm going to get to
Yeah.
see them again.
Yeah.
So I'm going, and yes, I want to see them. But more than that, I want to feel like I did when I was a kid again
Yeah.
for a couple of hours on a random Friday night in June. I want to be able to park the rest of the world and just be a 16-year-old kid again,
Yeah.
lost in that music, screaming the words, banging my head, doing all the things that I thought were cool when I was 16. And music lets you do that. It
Yeah.
lets you be that thing for a minute. You know,
Absolutely.
leadership programs, I mean, to make that illusion, but it's a reach, but it's the same. When someone leaves one of our programs, I want them to feel like A, it was a good use of their time, B, they learned something that they could use, and C, they had fun.
Yeah. That's it.
That's it.
That's it. So who's been a hero? Who's been that inspiration for you to do all this work in your life?
So it's a great question. The only reason I even know this work exists, I was an undergrad. I was in my junior year at Arizona State University, a renowned academic institution, especially in the 80s and 90s, known for its partying. I'll be honest. This is what it was known for. But I had a rigorous sort of rubric around how I picked classes because I played in a band and I had a job, and so I was only taking classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I needed an upper division management elective that happened on those days, and there was only one, and it was called Management Systems, and it was very generic, vague course description. I'm like, I have no idea what that is, but it's the only one, so I'm taking it. It's Thursday nights. The guy that taught it was a PhD candidate by the name of Christopher Neck, and he shined the light on, because essentially what we were doing in that class was, helping him validate the research he was doing for his thesis. And in his thesis, his work was all in the area of organizational behavior and this sort of organizational development. And he was telling me what he does. And I remember sitting in his office one afternoon, and I said, "People pay you for this?" He's like, "Yeah, dude, it's the craziest thing." So this is when the door was cracked open for me. It was an interesting story because I went on to grad school at Virginia Tech. That's where Chris got his first professor job.
Yep.
Like, I called Arizona State, back in the days before mobile phones. I called the management department and I said, "Hey, can I talk to Chris?" And they're like, "Oh, Chris finally got a job." And I said, "Oh, where?" And they said, "I don't know, Virginia Poly something or other." And I was like, "Wait." And I walked out of my apartment down the stairs. There was a moving van at the next building. And I swear to God, it was Chris moving in next door.
Wow.
So I ended up working with him. I was working as a GA to the chair of the management department when I was in grad school, and that was his boss. So I ended up working with him. We did some research. I co-authored a couple of papers, and just kind of learned the ropes from him. And to this day, when we wrote the book, I sent him a copy, and I'm like, none of this would have been possible
Yeah.
had it not been for all those conversations that we had sitting in your office in the
Wow.
dark, the basement of that management building. Yeah.
That's cool,
Christopher
man.
P. Neck is his name.
That's very cool.
Fantastic guy.
So, speaking of fantastic guys, let me ask you this. If you could meet one musician alive today, spend some time with them, hang out, have a coffee, see how they roll, ask some questions, who would it be?
It's funny. I've always I've always thought that if I could pull that card because of how they run not only their music but their business and their life, it would be either Sting or Billy Joel.
Okay. Yeah.
Guys that have made just lifelong careers out of doing the thing that they do. Billy Joel more than Sting in this one very tight lane, right? But no compromises. They do what they want. They figured out how to navigate that path. They did paid their dues era. They had the shitty times. They had the commercial success era where everybody called them a sellout, right? And then they've sort of morphed into these elder statesmen of, pop music. And that's rare.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people get to make that journey.
Yeah. I've heard Billy Joel talk a few times in interviews where he was like, "I wasn't the best. I wasn't the one. There were oodles of people that were more
Yeah.
talented than me. I just got the shot. I took it. It resonated. I kept going. I kept going, and that was it." And it's like with Sting after the Police,
Yeah.
those two dudes didn't do anything really afterwards. They kind of fumbled around, but Sting had it in. There was a different recipe, you
Yeah.
know. And
And he went on and did it again. And, dude's still doing it. And
yeah,
he's 74 years old or whatever.
uh-huh. Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah. It's all that tantric stuff.
Yeah.
That's
When
why
he goes on stage, it's a 3-hour orgasm or something. Yeah.
he's got it down, man. So, what is it that? Let me ask you this: from a leadership standpoint, being a very busy businessman, do you have balance? Do you think balance is important? Like when you look at nurturing your soul, taking care of clients, living a full life with your family, is balance huge for you?
Yeah. And that was a lesson that didn't come early to me, but it is a maxim in my life today. Right. It is a thing that has to be true. um, coming up in bands, you hustled, and it was all about hustle.
Yeah,
And if you weren't hustling, you weren't playing, and if you weren't playing, you weren't eating. So, it's a cycle. And again, like I told you, my dad's an entrepreneur, and Sunday was like Tuesday in my house. My dad went to work, so this sort of this notion of hustle equals success was burned into my brain. And fortunately, I like what I do. So, I work a lot, but now I do it on my terms and I make sure that I get to do the things that I need to do to take care of me. Because what I realized probably somewhere in my early mid 40s was the law of diminishing returns is a real thing. And if you are busting it for 12, 14, 16 hours at a run, the output that comes out of you in hour 14 ain't as good as what came out in hour 4. And nobody's going to give you an award for working longer or staying awake. Like, but that was a thing I had to shed. But it goes back to that every time you get on an airplane, right? And their flight attendants are doing their brief. What do they say about oxygen masks, right? You got to put yours on first. And I know that is a trite and beat to death metaphor, but so true,
Yeah.
right? If I'm not in a place where I feel taken care of, my output is shitty.
Yeah.
And you're going to get a subpar experience, and that's not fair to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I make sure, right? People say, you go to the gym every day. I'm like, yeah, I go to the gym every day. How do you do that? I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I go to the gym. It's important to me.
Yeah.
Right? How do you read so many books? I block time in my calendar. I walk out of this room and I go somewhere else and I read a book.
Yeah.
Because it's important to me.
Absolutely.
If it's important to you, you'll do it.
That's it.
But those are the things that nurture me. And I go read a book and I'll come back and write new content.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, if I don't do that, then I'm going to write content that sounds a whole lot like everything else that I've done.
Exactly.
Right? I'm going to go to the go-to.
The bottom line is that being alive and doing it well requires work.
Yeah.
Every single day you do what you do at the gym. There's levels of it from a biological standpoint that are going to make you healthier to do everything else that you do. If you don't get enough sleep at night, if you eat a bunch of crap, if you just don't do things, especially when you get older, I'm 52.
Shit, dude.
You get to that point where your whole entity has to be fed well all the way around, not one or two things, but holistically.
Absolutely. I'm 54 and I have to do way more than I used to in the gym for less results than I used to get.
Yeah.
And I can't eat like I used to eat.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to, but I can't. I can't drink like I used to drink.
Yep.
I want to, but I can't.
Yes.
I will pay the toll for those things.
Yep.
And I like it when I feel good. And, I have a job that I love. I get to do it with people whom I literally love. I love my family. My life is great. It's not easy.
Right.
But it's more than, growing up in metal bands, I didn't think I was going to be alive at 54. This is gravy, man.
Absolutely. So of all of these things, all these adventures and accomplishments, what are you the proudest of?
It's interesting. There are so many different gradients of pride. I made 2 human beings who are still alive and doing their thing, right? Pretty proud of that.
Yeah.
Personally speaking, right, I started my musical journey when I was 12 years old. I still play. Super proud of that. Like my little acoustic dad rock band, we don't play a lot anymore, but 5, 6 times a year. And when we do, a couple hundred people come out. It's a big party. People have a great time. The fact that I'm able to still do that and still feel that feeling, trying to explain to people what it feels like to be on stage is hard.
Yeah.
But I've been doing that for, 40 some odd years now. Crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Professionally speaking, I have a job doing a thing that I love to do, and I get to do it with people that I love. Super proud of that. I know so many people that are working in jobs that they don't want to be working in.
Yep.
But they're in our age group and they're like, well, what the hell am I going to do?
Yep.
Right? I'm not starting over right now. Like, it's cooked and they're stuck.
Yeah.
I know people that are in relationships that they should have gotten out of years ago. But they say the same thing. I'm 50 something years old. What the hell am I going to do? Get on Tinder? I'm like,
Yeah.
no, they're stuck. They're cooked. So I'm really proud of the fact that I went to the mat, walked through the fire, did the things that needed to get done to even be here today.
Absolutely.
There's a story in the book about my rock bottom when I didn't want to be here on the planet anymore. And I planned it and took steps to make that happen. Didn't work out, fortunately. But the story in the book is when I had to tell Morag and Ruby, my colleagues, that this is where I was. Super terrifying thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're going to tell me I have to go. They're not going to give me any responsibility. I'm not going to be able to talk to clients. No, they just hugged me, told me it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And asked what I needed from them in terms of support. And that was in 2016. And, here we are almost 9 years later.
Absolutely.
Still breathing.
Yeah.
Super proud of that.
Yeah, for sure. So at the end of the day, Eric, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are?
It's Joe. I think I'm the person. I'm the kind of guy that can show up to whatever the situation and probably figure out a way to either help or at the very least make you laugh.
Yeah. I totally
right. And sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah. So before we get out of the door here, I got to ask, have you seen that Netflix documentary on the '04 Red Sox when Theo came in?
I have not seen it yet.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Being a Boston guy, it will get you. The goosebumps will start flying. So let's get into your good business. If anyone wants to pick up your book, your latest book, they want to hire you, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yeah. So easiest place to go is our website. That's SkyeTeam.com, SkyeTeam.com. The book is called You, Me, We, Why We All Need a Friend at Work and How to Show Up as One. You can get that wherever you get your books. And the podcast is called The Corporate Bartender, and you can get that wherever you get your podcasts. Or if you're a glutton for punishment, go over to YouTube. You can watch it.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, and I will put all of this in the show links, so we'll be covered. Eric, this was an absolute delight. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your story. Best of luck with everything.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.